Jesus basically had two ways that he taught. He taught and he showed, or he showed and then he taught what he did. And that's pretty much that's the whole pattern of Jesus throughout the Gospels. He taught something and then he demonstrated what he taught, or he demonstrated something and made everybody go, whoa. And then he explained or he taught in relationship to what he did. Now, here's the word the Lord gave me, and it's for this house. Jesus was always discipling in time for a time. Jesus was always discipling in chronological time. Minutes, hours, days, weeks, months, years. Remember, he taught the disciples for some 3 years. He was discipling them in time so that they might have a time. He was discipling them day by day, week by week, month by month, year by year, to prepare them for a God moment. So, in chronological time, he's discipling and he's teaching and he's showing. But his purpose is to prepare them for their kairos, or their God moment. God is always discipling us by His Spirit and His Word and by the gifts that He's given the body, so that there will come that day of fulfillment, that kairos moment. Now here's the problem. Very few people are hungry enough and thirsty enough to go through the chronological discipling so that they can receive the moment. Tell your neighbor, everything with God's a setup. Everything in your life is a setup. God's teaching you, training you, getting you ready for the next test. He's always preparing your heart and preparing your mind, your will, and your emotions, your soulish man. He's always preparing you for the next big thing. Say big thing. The next big thing God's got for you. Quit thinking small. Quit thinking small. I'm with you. I understand that, because when things are still in seed form, you're like, maybe I'm shooting too high. You ever felt that way? You ever had something and it just God is bigger than your small thinking. And I am convinced that the reason we don't see God do bigger things is because we don't believe Him for bigger things. Because when we believe Him for bigger things, it requires more faith. Faith requires more processing, You see, here's the deal. Jesus had a huge following. I mean, he had thousands following Him. They followed Him without food. So He had to feed. Now it says 5,000 men that He fed on the mountaintop. But the truth is, they just counted the men back then. But they had their families with them, because families followed Jesus. Hebrew families were big. They were big. They were large. They had a lot of kids. So most theologians actually believe that it wasn't 5,000 that Jesus fed on that hill, but 20 to 30,000 that He fed on that hill. Because they had 2, 3, 4 kids apiece, and Mama was with them, and Grandmama was with them. So he fed them. They had a miracle. They started following Him. Then He started teaching them hard things. He said, you're only following me because of what I can give you, what I can do for you materially. And He looks at me and He says, but you, to partake of who I am, you've got to eat my flesh and drink my blood. Whoa! The Bible says they all left. And even the disciples choked. And Jesus looked at him and he said, are you going too? And they said, Lord, we got nowhere else to go. We are so outcast. Nobody wants us. You're stuck with us. And because they stuck with him, they got the meat of who he was until the day that, are you getting this? Until the day that he died. Now, they say, some theologians believe that on the day of Pentecost, we know that the Bible says there was 120 people there that morning. But many theologians believe that there were as many as 500 people that began with the disciples tarrying as the Lord told them to tarry. But only 120 made it through the chronological time of waiting, of praying, till the day of Pentecost, and there was a God moment. Now watch this. The disciples chose to stay when the word got deeper than what they could understand, and they got to see a resurrection. It could have been that some 500 followers hung together for a few weeks, but when nothing happened, they all began to disperse. But there was 120 that hung in there, like Jesus said, tarry until you are endued with power. What does tarry mean? Wait. We don't wait today. We wait for nothing. If our phone isn't loading fast enough, what we want, we cut that baby off. My new fancy, newfangled big phablet that I had went kablooey this last week. That baby was a 4G lightning bolt. It had the Wi-Fi on it, and I got high-speed internet at home. All I had to do was push a button. There she was in living color. Not she, but what I was after. That's just, oh God, that could be bad. Woo! I felt that one. What I was after was there. Hallelujah. Help me, Tony. Bail me out of here. Woo! Well, it fried. And now I've had to go back to a 4-year-old phone. And now I punch a button. A little ball spinning, just round and around and around. Then all of a sudden there's this, it's just the top 20% of the screen. And then the rest of it finally comes. God is discipling us in time so that in His time, His moment will come. I haven't got it all figured out yet. And if you think you got God figured out, you need to repent because your God just shrunk. But usually God makes us wait so long, that when the thing that He promised and discipled us finally happens, it seems like a suddenly. Our expectancy says it's not like Christmas. It's December 24th. Our expectancy is there, and then we wake up Christmas morning and the packages are under the tree. Don't ask me why that came to mind. That's just there. That's not a suddenly. A suddenly is when you believe and you believe and you believe and you believe and you wait and you wait and you wait and you wait and you anticipate and you anticipate and you anticipate till your anticipation is all gone, till everything in you that was hoping is about hoped out and you pretty much give up, and then with no calendar to tell you tomorrow's it. The suddenly comes. Now, that's with revelation that God gives us as well. And the Lord has been, this stuff takes time. What I'm about to share with you this morning, it takes time to get this. But even more, it takes a revelation. It's the Word. It's nothing new. There's no new thing under the sun. It's all in the Word, or it's not God. But there are so many things in the Word that we have not mined out yet, that the Lord has still given us progressive revelation on. And each individual is getting their own level, wherever their maturity level is, that's what they're getting out of the Word. And you can read something 20 times and all of a sudden you read the 21st and you went, oh, I never saw that before. And for the last 4 or 5 years, the Lord's been working a different thing in me. And I've had to get it bits and pieces, because as much as I despise tradition and religion, I found I had more in me than I thought. And until I was willing to turn loose of some man-made tradition and turn loose of some past methodology that I used to use that used to work, I couldn't get to this understanding. I want to show you something this morning, and I'm going to teach, and I know that was a long setup, and I know you probably got enough there to take to lunch with you and chew on the rest of the day, but I just want to do a Bible study with you this morning, just short. You're going to need your word. I didn't fix a PowerPoint up this morning, to be honest with you, because there was just too much stuff that I'd just be flipping through PowerPoint like crazy. I would rather you do one or two things this morning. If you take notes, just write the scriptures down and then go back, because I don't want you to miss what I got to say, but you're going to want the scriptures. And if you try to write down everything that I say, you're not going to keep up with where I'm going next. And the downloads are free. All you got to do is go to the website, riverchurchroanoke.com, go to the media player, and you can either play it over again or you can download it. It's all free there for you. But I'd rather you just kind of hang in here with me and let me just kind of flow through this the way the Lord gave it to me. And let's see if we can make some sense out of this, because I believe the Lord wants to manifest His glory. He wants to manifest His glory. That word manifest means to reveal, to demonstrate. The Old Testament word for glory literally means heavy or weighty. It means splendor, wealth, a manifestation of power, the glorious presence, and I like this, reward. All that is tied up in the word glory. And the truth of the matter is, you can't preach on glory in one Sunday, because you're talking about God and God's glory. It's a well that's a mind that's never completely mined out. In the New Testament, it gives us an even greater picture of what the New Testament glory means. It means honor and praise, a visible sign of greatness. It means splendor or brightness, amazing might and greatness. Now, with that in mind, turn to to Numbers chapter 14. And I'm going to read 3 passages of Scripture out of the Old Testament and comment on them, because the Old Testament gives us physical pictures of spiritual realities. God shows us with pictures in the Old Testament with what He wants to do spiritually in the New Testament. Because God showed us physical things in the Old Testament, He wants to believe Him without having to see stuff. That because this is the way He used to do it, because God is unchangeable, He's still doing it. Only now He's doing it by and through those who have faith to believe Him. Because faith is always key. Tell your neighbor, it's all in faith. It is in what you believe. If you don't believe it, you will not see it. But if you believe it, you will see it. And if you see it because you believe it, then hopefully you're going to get to see it while somebody else who doesn't believe it is around. And they're going to believe it because they saw it because you believe for it. Don't ask me to repeat that. I can't. You have to get the tape. I'm in the flow here. But in Numbers 14, let me just set this up. The spies have just come back, given a great review of the Promised Land. Said, "Man, it's great. It's wonderful. You won't believe the harvest that's there. God's already promised it's ours. Let's go get it." And then 2 of them gave the good report, and 10 of them gave the bad report. It is important who you believe. And 10 of them came back and said, "Yeah, all that's true, but there are big giants in the land. There's more trouble in that place than it's worth." Every promise God's ever given you, when He gives you insight into it and what it's going to take for that promise to be fulfilled, your natural man's going to look, and the first thing you're going to see before you mature in the Lord is all the trouble that you're going to have to go through. And too many people decide, like the children of Israel did, "Well, I see it's good, but it's going to be too much trouble. I'm not going to go there. I guess I'll just have to stay on this side of the land." Now, I'm setting this up because this is interesting. Because the Lord, His response and Moses' response, even though there is chastening for that generation, God never stops His plan. The promise is still there. Now with that, in Numbers chapter 14, I want to start reading at verse 1. It says, "Then all the congregation lifted up their voices and cried, and all the people wept that night. And the sons of Israel grumbled against Moses and Aaron, and the whole congregation said to them, 'Would that we had died in the land of Egypt, or that we had died in this wilderness.'" They haven't even gone in yet. They haven't even tried. They didn't even say, "Well, let's see what happens." They just received the bad report. Anybody giving you a bad report? Doctor ever given you a bad report? Your husband, your wife ever given you a bad report? Your children ever given you a bad report? Has anybody given you a bad report about that church? Oh, I'm feeling hot. I'm going to go there. Well, now you know how hard it is to get a church plant. They don't have all the things that we have. But we will have more soon. That's faith. But you said they're already grumbling and griping, and they hadn't even tried. Let me give you some of the greatest advice that I know how to give you when it comes to God giving you a promise, and then there's a bad report that comes, and you get all shook up. Let me give you some good advice. You ready? I'll stand up for this one. Just shut up. No, I'm being serious. Sometimes the best thing we can do in walking out the promises of God, when we see how hard it's going to be, is just keep our big traps shut and go on and give it a shot. Because the group that griped and growled and mumbled and said it's better to go back to where we were, God said, fine, but you're going to die there. You'll never experience the promise that I gave you. God given you a promise, you can either move forward instead of the problems, in spite of the problems, or you can choose to whine and moan and groan and complain and say, this is just going to be too hard. We can't do it. How dare they offer us such a promise with such problems? We like it when you broke the bread and the fishes. But don't tell me I've got to eat your flesh, drink your blood. Don't tell me I've got to partake of your sufferings to receive resurrected life. I think I'm preaching. I think I'm doing pretty good. I'm waiting y'all to stand up and holler and shout. I mean, you can pull it out of me, or you can sit there and, I mean, if you want more, the more you draw, the more I will pour out. Let's just disciple as we go. I do not expect this church to be a quiet church. I don't want quiet church. I don't want nice, sweet disciples sitting there. I'm not after babes who are... No, I'm done with that. I'm done with that stuff. I'm looking for warriors. I'm looking for warriors in the Spirit who, when that truth penetrates, something goes off in them and you go, oh my God, I can't stand that. That is so good, preacher. Preach on. God, that is so good. I got to run. It was with a loud voice that the prophet spoke. It's a loud trumpet that's going to blow. You're a city set on a hill. You see, when you're set on a hill, you know you're going to be seen. So you might as well be loud while you're at it. When you're down in the valley, you're hiding. Well, I hope nobody sees us. Don't start any fires. The enemy might. If there's a fire, the enemy might see us. You see, all of us have come out of different places. This church is growing, and from the 15 that we started from, now we've got people coming from different backgrounds and from different places, and everybody's scarred, hurt, and wounded. Some of you came out of quiet churches looking for life. Some of you came out of loud churches that everything blew up and you went, oh God, did he just say, we've been there and done that. You have got to decide whether you have left Egypt and are going into the promised land or not. And they began quietly. Once they went in, God told them, be quiet. First 6 days going around Jericho. Be quiet. Everybody get in order. Everybody learn to walk. Everybody learn to submit one to another. Everybody learn to trust God. Everybody wait in Chronos time so that when the God moment comes, when the God moment came, they shouted. And they didn't stop shouting going into battle from that day till they conquered the land. Whew, I'm in the flow. We're going to be here till 6 o'clock tonight. Lord, hallelujah. I'm kidding. We might get through this scripture. Verse 3, why is the Lord bringing us into this land to fall by the sword? Give up before you even start. God brings you into a place, and then there's the bad report, and you're already like, well, God's going to kill me here. Jill and I've been there. We've walked through that several times in our ministry life. We started walking into promise, and then it seemed like God was trying to kill us. And this last season's been the worst. The tests do get bigger as you mature in the Lord. But here's the Lord's promise. It gives a whole new light to Psalms 23. We preach it at funerals. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. And we preach that. But the end of Psalms 23 says, the Lord promises, I will prepare a table for you in the presence of your enemies. Your feast is not outside in your comfort zone. The feast that God has for you is not prepared for you where everything's all sweet and hunky-dory. The feast the Lord has for you is in the midst of the presence of your enemies. Why? Because God wants to show off. Will you give Him the opportunity to show off? That's the question. Will you give Him the opportunity to show off? Yes, there was more of them, enemies, in the promised land than there were Israelites. Yes, there were giants in the land. Yes, there was thousands upon thousands upon thousands of trained warriors who had been brought up as warriors for hundreds and hundreds of years. They knew how to fight. Israel was brought up as slaves. They'd never been trained to fight, to do anything. God said, here's what I want you to do. I want you to march right into the middle of that land at my word, because I've given it to you. Lord, have you seen them? Lord, they serve heathen gods. Lord, they'll crush us. God says, number one, they won't crush you if I've already said the victory's yours. Number two, my whole purpose in sending you in is to show them that your God is greater than their gods. And we look at the big bad world around us. And now we are officially, and have been in a few decades, in a post-Christian society. There are more of them serving the heathen gods than there are of us serving the true God. And there are many who say they are serving the true God, but it's with lip service only, not in action. Our numbers are dwindling, and our enemies are increasing, and they have better everything than what it seems we have. They have better marketing. They own the television waves. They own radio. They own the internet. They own all these things. And God says, still greater is He that is in us than he that is in the world. But we're shrinking. It's God. It's not by might nor by strength, but by my Spirit, saith the Lord. Gideon was in the same situation. Israel had turned their back on God. They were a mess. They were being overrun. What was it? The Philistines? I didn't look at this. It's just flowing. The Philistines were just about to wipe them out. And they got this great army together. I think it was 20, 30,000 men to go fight. And the Lord said, told Gideon, he said, Gideon, go take them and get them all to drink from the stream. And he said, only keep the ones that lap like a dog. Don't get the ones that all they're focused on is the water. Get the ones that are alert, that are watching. So Gideon's army went from tens of thousands to 300. God said, we're good. And they go in. Folks, we have to get a bigger understanding of our God, of who He is. And if you and God are not the majority, you need to go back in the prayer closet. If you and God are not the majority, you need to get back in the Word. If you and God are not the majority, then you need to go get you some faith. So here they are. Are you okay? Oh, Jesus. We just threw the first paragraph in my notes. All right, here we go. Verse 4. So they said to one another, let us appoint a leader and return to Egypt. You see, everybody wants to be led except they want the leader to lead them where they want to go. Jill's over there about to fall out of her chair laughing. We want a leader. Just let us tell you where to lead us. It's what's wrong with the Western church. I can't go there. I can't. I cannot go there. Oh, I want to go there so bad. All right, Lord, I won't. Verse 5, then Moses and Aaron fell on their faces in the presence of the assembly of the congregation and the sons of Israel. And Joshua the son of Nun and Caleb the son of Jephunneh, of those who had spied out the land, tore their clothes. And they spoke to all the congregation of the sons of Israel, saying, the land which we passed through to spy out is an exceedingly good land. If the Lord is pleased with us, then He will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. If the Lord is pleased with us. In other words, the promise has a stipulation. God says, I'll give it to you if I'm pleased with you. How many know God was already displeased with the Israelites because of their mumbling, their grumbling, their complaining, and their rebellion? Because you see, ultimately, and I can't take you to the scripture this morning because I got to finish with where I want to go. Ultimately, the scripture says they weren't complaining against their leadership. They were complaining against God. Jesus' promise is that if you love me, you will obey me. And if you obey me, I will come and manifest or disclose myself to you. That's talking about the glory. I'll show myself to you. Oh, there he's getting into that. Ooh. You know, sooner or later you got to decide whether you want to live in your head or by your spirit. Sooner or later, you got to decide whether what you read is true and able to be experienced or not. You have to decide whether you're going to be a spiritually minded person who's grounded in the Word, or whether you're just going to be grounded in the Word and spiritually stupid. I'm going to preach over here. The Pharisees knew the Word, but they were stupid when it came to the experience of God Himself. They had the first 5 books memorized. And then everything the book taught them about was standing in front of them. And they went stupid. I'm telling you, if this book doesn't produce experience, then we're not applying it right. We're not believing it right. This Word works because it's the Word of God. And it's the power of God that stands behind His Word. Thank you, Lord. I got to use my word today. Stupid. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And nobody's going to write me letters, and if they do, I don't care. Verse 8, if the Lord is pleased with us, then He will bring us into this land and give it to us, a land which flows with milk and honey. Only do not rebel against the Lord, and do not fear the people of the land, for they will be our prey. Our prey. You are going to have to get a fighting spirit in these last days, or you will not survive. You're going to have to throw off some of this false humility. Well, now you must stay humble. That's what religion tells you. They don't even understand what true humility is. Humility and meekness is power under control. Jesus was the most humble man to ever walk the face of the earth. And there was no bolder, more powerful person to ever walk on planet earth than the Lord Jesus. And He had a fighting spirit. Have you ever read any of His encounters with the Pharisees? He would let them open their foolish mouth, and then He would punch them. Not literally. But He was sick and tired of the religiosity of His day when He began His ministry. That's why He took a whip to it. And He was still sick and tired of its religiosity at the end of His ministry. That's why He took another whip to it just before He went. But the church people will tell you, don't talk about the church. Don't rebuke the sin-sick, doctrinally off, perverse teaching, wishy-washy, don't take a stand church. I'm telling you, it's time for some prophets to rise up and tell some of the always positive, how are you? Everything's good. You're wicked if you say anything bad about anybody about the church. You know something? It just does something in me. It makes me want to punch them. And I think I'll start. But we've got to experience some victory first. There's got to be a platform first. There's got to be some warring soldiers who are willing to fight and stand in the midst of the battle. Who believe that if necessary, in the midst of the struggle, they can look up at the sun and just stand still. Because I ain't done yet. They're our prey. Some of you are getting it, some of you aren't. They're our prey. The Lord wins the battle, but we fight. Jesus won every battle, but He had to fight. God didn't do it for Him, God did it through Him. And until you're willing to let God do it through you, you will sit back in your lazy boy on your sanctified haunches and judge everybody else that's going on trying to do something around you. Well, they don't look right. They don't smell right. They're not our name brand. They're tattooed up. They wear shorts. They got earrings. They don't seem to care about our traditions. You're about to get it. Jesus is starting to show up again in sandals and everyday clothes. Are you okay? You good? I'm not going to try to get through all this, but I got to get you to the good part. Only do not rebel against the Lord, verse 9, and do not fear the people of the land, for they will be our prey. Their protection has been removed from them. In other words, God stripped them of their power. They still look big and bad. But the Lord said, I have removed the power of the demonic entities that empowered them. I went ahead and stripped them of their demonic power. Now they're just flesh and blood. And now I'm about to empower you with my glory. So that you, even in your weakened and unprepared and untrained ways of battle, I'm going to give you my glory and I'm going to go before you and I'm going to empower you in your flesh to overcome their flesh, because I have taken the power of the demons that they have operated in from them. It says in Ephesians and Colossians that at the cross, Jesus stripped the authority and the power of the enemy. That He defeated Satan at the cross. And that He is now under our feet. You see, y'all gotten dancing now. I mean, Lord, you ought to be stomping on. The power of the devil is broken from off of you. If you learn how to tap into the glory, if faith will rise up and you can get into the manifested presence of the Lord, there is not a demon in hell that can stand against you. Because Jesus has defeated him at the cross. Jesus came to destroy the works of the devil. That's what John tells us in his little epistle. Everything Jesus did was devil stomping, devil destroying, devil exposing. And every time He did something, He said, now you know that the kingdom of God has been in your midst. Now you've got to decide which kingdom you're going to give greater glory to. You're going to give the greater glory to the devil's kingdom, by saying we can't do that, we can't go there, that can't be delivered, that can't be healed, that can't be done. Or we're going to say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Oh, if y'all knew how much this was God, you'd be all over. You'd just... I told Jill coming down the road, I said, I feel about spiritual as a worn out shoe this morning. God in heaven, I can't get all this. I got 10 minutes. And the Lord said to Moses, how long will this people spurn me? How long will they be in unbelief and rebellion? How long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst? I will spite them with pestilence and dispose them, and I will make you into a nation greater and mightier than they. But Moses said to the Lord, then the Egyptians will hear of it by your strength. You brought them up, and this people from their midst, and they will tell it to the inhabitants of this land. They have heard that you, O Lord, are in the midst of this people. For you, O Lord, are seen eye to eye, while your cloud stands over them. And you go before them in a pillar of a cloud by day, and in a pillar of fire by night. This is the issue. God's name is at stake. If you don't think enough of your name and your testimony, that's fine. But God's name is at stake. God's name is at stake. I have learned that even if I am willing to see my reputation destroyed, put down, and don't care anything about rebuilding it, it doesn't matter. I come in the name of the Lord. I have declared that God sent me. Come on, you have too. You have too. You've begun to do things because you believe the Lord sent you to do it. And after you get your hind end whipped a few times and you get crushed, you get to the place that God can finally use you. And because you think there's nothing left in you, no reputation, no word, no nothing, no recognition, all that's gone. Now you think God can't do anything with you, so you want to walk away. God says, what are you going to walk away for? I just now got you to where I can prove that it's me in the midst of my enemies. It is my name that is at stake. God says, if you'll walk on just a little bit farther, I'll give you a feast in the presence of your enemies. Because you see, restoration must take place in the presence of your enemies. Well, let me go back here in the corner and You see, most of us have run from our enemies. We've wanted to move away. We've wanted to hide. God says, how am I going to restore you? How are they going to know? How are they going to know that you have my favor? How are they going to know the promises that I made you that they tried to take are still applicable, and that no matter what they do, He can do greater? I'm sorry. I can get a little dramatic. I feel this thing. I feel this thing. I can. Now, if Moses is interceding, he says, "Now, Lord, if you slay this people as one man, then the nations will have heard of your fame and will say, because the Lord could not bring this people into the land which He promised them by oath, therefore He slaughtered them in the wilderness." See, what Moses is saying is this: he said, "Lord, it's going to look like the demons and Satan are greater than you." See, it never was about the stubborn, rebellious, obstinate people. It was always about the name of the Lord. That's why you can be stubborn and obstinate, full of all kinds of stuff, and God still use you. Why? Because it ain't about you. It's about His namesake. Now, I'm about to get there. Let's just drop on Verse 17, but I pray, let the power of the Lord be great, just as you were declared. And the Lord is slow to anger and abundant in loving kindness, forgiving iniquity and transgression. And He will by no means clear the guilty, visiting the iniquity of the fathers on the children and the third and the fourth generations. Pardon, I pray, the iniquity of this people according to thy greatness of your loving kindness, just as you also have forgiven this people from Egypt until now. So the Lord said, I have pardoned them according to your word. But indeed, as I live, all of the earth will be filled with the glory of the Lord. Amen. Let me repeat that. But indeed, as I live, all of the earth will be filled with the glory of the Lord. The Lord said this in the midst of failure. All the things He did in Egypt. The 10 incredible miracles that He produced. He got them out. All the mumbling and grumbling they did, getting them from Egypt to Sinai. Then they've worshipped the golden calf. They've already taken on another god in the midst of the God working signs and wonders and miracle for them. Oh, it's bad, but people hadn't changed. We take on the God of materialism too. Gold. We'd rather have something we see than something we have to have faith in. Nothing's changed. Gold, glory, and girls bring the men down, and gold, glory, and men bring the girls down. Because we'd rather worship and party around something that we can see and feel. And now they've rejected the land God's promised. And God's ticked. But even though God's ticked, and even though He looks at that generation and He says, you will not go in. I'm still going to love you. But you're going to spend the rest of your life wandering around. I want to tell you something. There are so many Christians out there wandering around. They see the glory cloud. They're barely getting their needs met. I'm so blessed. The Lord just provided the $15 I needed to make the electric payment. Now you're going to have to hear my heart, because I have been there and done that, and we have experienced that kind of provision. But my friend, that is a sign that you're wandering in the wilderness out of God's will, still under His love. I know I just bit. I know. But God says, I have a land flowing of milk and honey with more than enough. That don't mean everybody drives big fancy cars and lives in big fancy houses and names it and claims it and blabs it and grabs it. I'm not talking about that. Those of you who've been around me long enough to know, no, I don't do that. But it does mean that my needs are met to the ability that I'm able to have overflow to sow into others. Spiritually, most of us are like this. We're just holding on to the end of the rope. Oh, I'm just holding on. God, just give me enough strength to hold on to the rope. That's wilderness mentality. Because I'm supposed to be so filled with the overflow of God that I'm helping somebody else get off of their rope to trust God too. But it's all in the glory. It's all in the glory. I got to land the plane. It's in God's glory. Everything comes out of God's glory, God's manifested presence. Israel had the presence, the glory cloud, before they had the tabernacle. For those of you that came in a little bit late, I shared earlier, and I'm done. I'm closing with this. I have taught for 30 years on the tabernacle. I love it. Every New Testament truth is there. It's there. And I've always taught, because at the end it says that after Moses completed the tabernacle according to the pattern, the glory of God filled it. And the Lord showed me something by just asking me a question. He said, I thought the glory was already with them, not because they built something. Stupid. What showed up between them and the Egyptians at the Dead Sea? The glory cloud, the fire. It parted the waters, went before them, kept the enemy from them. The waters went back, destroyed the enemy. It was a cloud by day and a fire by night. It led them all the way to Sinai, several weeks of travel. It provided quail, manna, water from rocks. It was already providing covering from the heat in the day. They're in the desert. They are in the desert. They are in the middle of Nevada. It is hot. And there was a cloud over them, so that it wouldn't be so hot. I was fishing Friday. Yes, I go fishing. If you have a problem with that, that's your problem, not mine. Just so you know. I do on my time what I want to do. You do on your time what you want to do. I fish, get over it, no problem, don't bother me. It's hot. We're sweating. Yeah, but you're fishing, Pastor. I don't care. It's still hot. And then this cloud cover came in. It dropped 10, 15 degrees right there, just bang. The Lord was already cooling things off for them, and they didn't even understand it. The fire was there by night. The enemy was afraid of them that came around because there was this pillar of fire over them the whole time. What I want you to understand is this, is everything comes out of the glory, the presence of God. The tabernacle came out of the glory. The glory, the tabernacle wasn't built so the glory could come. The glory cloud came so that the tabernacle could be built so that God could fill it. And Jesus died. His grace was there. He had already died for you before you came to Jesus, so that He could save you, so that He could make you a tabernacle for His presence. So you wouldn't have to, oh God help me, so you wouldn't have to go somewhere else to see or touch or feel the glory, but so that the glory would be in you. So the glory would be in you. There's a teaching out today, and I understand it, and I agree with it in part, but I disagree with it in the fullness of it. There's a teaching out today that says that there's portals, that there's special places on the earth that God pours out special things. I understand that. No, I do. I understand that. I believe there are places that it seems like the heavens are more open than other places. Now, to understand that, you need to go to one of these oases. Once you go there, it's like, wow. But I don't believe it's because God stuck His finger in the atmosphere and said, here, you can go here. What I believe it is is that there was a group of people who determined that they were portals and that they were going to make that region an area where God could work and move. You're the portal of heaven. You're the place where the glory resides. Paul said in the New Testament, unlike Moses, New Testament ministry is to go from glory to glory to glory. Not better methodology, not more manipulation, not better music, not better. Just lost you right at the end of the sermon. I just lost you. Everything's to come out of His glory. When it comes out of His glory, it's Him, and everybody around you knows it. Jesus said you were a city sitting on a hill to let your light shine. He meant let the glory of God shine from you so others can experience Him.